The airlock hissed open and Lieutenant Mara Bolton stepped into chaos. Blood smeared the containment cell floor. The Vrexian ambassador thrashed against magnetic restraints, its 6 legs twitching in violent spasms. 3 other Vrexians stood motionless behind the observation glass, their compound eyes unblinking, their mandibles frozen mid-click. "Stand down, Lieutenant," Commander Harris barked through her earpiece. "Medical team is en route." Mara ignored him. She crossed the threshold, boots splashing through purple ichor. The ambassador's lower left appendage hung at a grotesque angle, torn nearly clean through. Emergency foam had hardened around the wound, but the seal was failing. Pressure loss. The limb would die in minutes. The other Vrexians did nothing. Just watched. "Bolton, that's an order." She dropped to one knee beside the writhing alien. Its breathing tubes flared, spraying acidic mist that burned her cheek. Mara didn't flinch. She yanked the medkit from her belt and popped it open with her teeth. The ambassador's eyes locked onto hers. Terror. Pure animal terror. "Easy," Mara whispered. "I've got you." She ripped away the failing foam. The wound gaped, exposing bone analog and ruptured vascular channels. Standard protocol said wait for xenobiology specialists. Standard protocol said humans shouldn't touch Vrexian physiology without environmental suits. Mara's hands moved anyway. She pulled combat gauze from the kit, the kind soaked in universal clotting agents. Her fingers worked fast, wrapping the appendage in smooth, tight layers. The ambassador shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, but Mara held firm. She anchored the bandage with surgical tape, then grabbed the compression sleeve. "Bolton, you're contaminating the scene!" She slid the sleeve over the mangled limb and activated it. Pneumatic hiss. The ambassador's thrashing slowed. Its breathing tube settled into a rhythmic flutter. Behind the glass, the 3 Vrexians remained perfectly still. Mara locked the compression sleeve and sat back on her heels. Purple blood covered her hands up to the elbows. The ambassador's eyes tracked her movement, no longer wild with panic. One of its upper appendages lifted, trembling, and touched her wrist. The gesture lasted 3 seconds. Then the medical team swarmed in, pulling Mara back, surrounding the ambassador with scanners and sterile fields. Commander Harris appeared at her shoulder, his face carved from stone. "Explain yourself." Mara watched the medic stabilize the ambassador, watched the other Vrexians finally move, finally respond, finally show something other than that terrible observant stillness. "It needed help," she said. Harris opened his mouth to respond. The ambassador spoke first, its translator crackling to life with words that would change everything. "She touched the dying. You cannot understand what this means." The medical bay hummed with alien machinery. Mara sat on a decon bench, while Dr. Kyle Brennan scrubbed purple residue from her arms. The chemical wash stung, but she kept her eyes fixed on the observation window where the Vrexian ambassador rested in a specialized recovery pod. "You're lucky you didn't trigger an immune response," Brennan muttered. "Vrexian biology doesn't react well to foreign contact. Their skin secretes a defense compound when stressed." "I noticed." Mara flexed her reddened fingers. Small blisters were already forming. "You noticed and did it anyway." Brennan shook his head. "That's either bravery or stupidity. It was dying. So we let the specialist handle it. That's protocol for a reason. He sealed the last of her burns with synthetic skin. Commander Harris wants you in the briefing room. Now." Mara stood, pulling on a fresh uniform. Through the window, she watched a Vrexian medic tend to the ambassador. The other 3 Vrexians from the observation deck stood in the corner, utterly motionless again, like statues, like they weren't even alive. The briefing room was cramped. Harris sat at the head of the table, his jaw tight. Beside him, Captain Laura Vance leaned back in her chair, studying Mara with shrewd eyes. The 3rd occupant made Mara's breath catch. A Vrexian, not the ambassador. This one wore crystalline bands around its upper segments, markings of high rank. "Lieutenant Bolton," Captain Vance said. "Meet Hierarchan Zexthor. He speaks for the Vrexian collective aboard this station." The Vrexian's translator hummed. "You violated containment protocol. You touched Ambassador Trilvik during medical crisis. You applied primitive dressing to catastrophic injury." Mara stood at attention. Yes, Hierarchant. Why? The ambassador was suffering. The wound was critical. I had the tools to help. Zexthor's mandibles clicked in rapid sequence. The translator struggled to keep up. You risked contamination. You risked diplomatic incident. You risked your own health. For what purpose? To save a life. Silence filled the room. Zexthor moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting the overhead lights in prismatic patterns. Mara forced herself not to step back. Do you understand what you have done, human? I helped someone who needed it. No. Zexthor's vocalization bypassed the translator, a deep thrumming that resonated in Mara's chest. You have shattered a fundamental truth of our existence. Captain Vance leaned forward. Hierarchant, perhaps you should explain. Zexthor turned to face the viewport, his silhouette framed against the stars beyond. The Vrexian Collective operates on principles your species cannot comprehend. We are efficiency. We are logic. We are survival of the fittest. When one of us is injured beyond immediate function, we observe. We calculate. We determine if intervention serves the collective. You let them die, Mara said quietly. We let nature decide. Zexthor's appendages gestured at nothing. For 73,000 cycles, this has been our way. We have conquered 14 star systems. We have outlasted species more numerous than yours. We have thrived because we do not waste resources on the damaged. Harris cleared his throat. The ambassador's injury wasn't terminal. The injury was severe, the outcome uncertain. 3 of our medical specialists observed and concluded intervention carried too much risk relative to reward. Ambassador Trelvik was deemed expendable. Mara's hands clenched. He has a name. He's not expendable. Correct. Zexthor turned back to her. He is not. You have proven this. The translator crackled. Zexthor's next words came slower, carefully modulated. In our entire recorded history, no Vrexian has ever intervened to save another at personal risk. It is against our nature, against our evolution, against everything we are. His eyes fixed on Mara. But you did, without hesitation, without calculation. You saw suffering and responded with action. Captain Vance stood. Hierarchant, what exactly are you saying? I am saying, Captain, that Lieutenant Mara Bolton has committed an act we believed impossible. She has shown us something we thought did not exist in the universe. Zexthor's mandibles spread wide. Compassion without logic. Sacrifice without benefit. Care for the individual over the collective. She showed you humanity, Vance said. She showed us a threat. The room went cold. Zexthor continued. Or an opportunity. The collective council is divided. Some believe humans are dangerous, unstable, too emotional to trust. Others believe you possess something we have lost, something that might make us stronger. What happens now? Mara asked. Zexthor moved toward the door. Now, Lieutenant, you will meet with Ambassador Trelvik. He has requested your presence specifically. What you discuss will determine the future of human-Vrexian relations. He paused at the threshold, and possibly the future of my entire species. The recovery pod gleamed under sterile lights. Ambassador Trelvik lay suspended in a gel matrix, his injured limb encased in regenerative scaffolding. The compression sleeve Mara had applied was still visible beneath the advanced medical equipment, a crude human bandage wrapped around alien flesh. Trelvik's eyes tracked her approach. His translator activated before she could speak. You returned. You asked for me. Mara stopped at the edge of the pod. How do you feel? Confused. Grateful. Terrified. His breathing tubes pulsed in uneven rhythms. These are new sensations. I did not possess words for them until 6 hours ago. Mara pulled up a chair. Through the observation window, she could see 2 Vrexian guards standing motionless outside. Watching. Always watching. The Hierarchant said I showed you something impossible. You did. Trelvik shifted in the gel, his recovered appendages moving with practiced grace. When the structural beam collapsed and severed my limb, I felt pain. Intense pain. But more than that, I felt certainty. I knew the protocol. I knew my fellow Vrexians would observe, calculate, and determine my fate based on resource efficiency. They decided you weren't worth saving. They decided incorrectly, but their process was sound. My injury was severe, the risk of infection high, the cost of treatment substantial. I was a probability problem, and the numbers did not favor intervention. Mara leaned forward. But you didn't want to die. Trelvik's mandibles trembled. I should not have cared. Individual survival is irrelevant when measured against collective prosperity. For 73,000 cycles, every Vrexian has understood this truth. We are taught it from emergence. We are conditioned to accept it. We are genetically predisposed to embrace it. But you didn't embrace it. No. The word came out sharp, almost angry, when I saw my colleagues watching. When I felt my life draining away, something inside me rebelled. I wanted to live. Not for the collective. Not for efficiency. For myself. For the experience of existing one more day. He paused, his eyes dimming slightly. And then you came through that airlock. Mara remembered the moment. The blood. The thrashing. The absolute silence from the other Vrexians. You weren't afraid of me, Trelvik continued. You weren't calculating odds or measuring resources. You saw me suffering and you acted. Your species calls this instinct. We call it insanity. Is that what the collective thinks? That humans are insane? Some do. Hierarchan Zexthor has presented your actions to the Council. They are reviewing historical data on human behavior. The results are disturbing to them. Mara shifted in her chair. Disturbing how? Your species thrives on inefficiency. You save individuals who cannot contribute. You expend resources on the sick, the elderly, the damaged. You form emotional bonds that compromise rational decision-making. You sacrifice your own survival for others, with no genetic relation to you. You make it sound like weakness. We thought it was. Trelvik's translator crackled with something that might have been laughter. But then we examined your war records, your expansion rate, your technological advancement, your diplomatic success. By every metric, humanity should have destroyed itself through emotional irrationality. Instead, you have become one of the most successful species in the known galaxy. He lifted one appendage, gesturing at his bandaged limb. You saved me with equipment designed for human physiology. You adapted it in seconds to fit Vrexian anatomy. You improvised a solution to a problem you had never encountered before. That is not weakness, Lieutenant Bolton. That is terrifying. Competence born from irrational compassion. Outside, one of the guards shifted position. The first movement Mara had seen from any Vrexian observer. The collective is afraid of us, she said. Yes, and fascinated. And divided. Trelvik's breathing tubes fluttered rapidly. There is a faction that believes humans represent an evolutionary dead end. That your compassion will eventually consume you, make you vulnerable, destroy you from within. And the other faction believes that we are the ones at a dead end, that our perfect efficiency has cost us something vital, that we have optimized ourselves into stagnation. Mara stood, moving to the viewport. Earth hung in the distance, a blue marble against the void. What do you believe, Ambassador? I believe I was dying and you saved me. I believe I felt gratitude for the first time in my existence. I believe there are 300 million Vrexians on our homeworld who have never experienced what I felt when you wrapped that bandage around my limb. What did you feel? Trelvik was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his translator struggled with the words. Hope. I felt hope that someone cared whether I lived or died. Not because I was useful. Not because I served the collective, but because I was alive and suffering and that mattered to you. The door hissed open. Hierarchan Zexthor entered, followed by Captain Vance and 3 Vrexian officials Mara didn't recognize. Ambassador Trelvik, Zexthor said, the Council has made its decision. They wish to proceed with the experiment. Mara's pulse quickened. What experiment? Zexthor turned to her, his compound eyes gleaming. Lieutenant Bolton, how would you like to teach an entire species how to care? The training facility sprawled across 3 station decks. Mara stood in the central chamber, surrounded by 50 Vrexian volunteers. They watched her with compound eyes that reflected nothing, their bodies utterly still except for the occasional twitch of a breathing tube. "This is a mistake," Commander Harris said through her earpiece. "You're a combat medic, not a diplomat." "She is exactly what we need," Zexthor replied from the observation platform above. "Theory will not teach my people compassion, only demonstration." Captain Vance's voice cut in. "Lieutenant, you have full autonomy here. The collective has requested specifically that you operate without Vrexian oversight. Show them what humanity does naturally." Mara took a breath and stepped forward. The Vrexians didn't move. "My name is Lieutenant Mara Bolton. I'm here to teach you emergency medical response, with an emphasis on individual care." She gestured to the medical equipment laid out on tables around the room. "Who here has medical training?" Silence. Not one appendage raised. "Okay. Who here has seen someone injured?" Every Vrexian present made a clicking sound. Affirmative. "And what did you do when you saw them injured?" A Vrexian in the front spoke, its translator flat and emotionless. "Observed. Calculated probability of survival. Reported findings to medical logistics. Awaited resource allocation decision." "How long does that process take?" "Between 40 and 90 seconds, depending on injury severity and current medical capacity." Mara pulled the chronometer from her pocket and set it on the table. "A human can bleed out in 60 seconds from a severed artery. Brain damage from oxygen deprivation starts at 4 minutes. Shock can kill in less than an hour if untreated." She looked at each Vrexian. "Your process is too slow." Another Vrexian spoke. "Efficiency requires calculation. Emotional response leads to resource waste." "Does it?" Mara grabbed a training dummy designed to mimic Vrexian physiology. With one swift motion, she activated its injury simulation. Purple fluid began pumping from a severed appendage analog. "Timer starts now." The chronometer began counting. The Vrexians watched the dummy bleed. 10 seconds, 20, 30. None of them moved. At 45 seconds, Mara grabbed gauze and wrapped the wound. At 52 seconds, she applied pressure. At 60 seconds, the bleeding stopped. "I just saved this life using 15 credits worth of supplies in 1 minute of time." She stepped back. "Now you tell me the resource cost of training a replacement ambassador, of losing institutional knowledge, of diplomatic setbacks from preventable deaths." A Vrexian in the back clicked its mandibles. "Ambassador training requires 8 cycles. Institutional knowledge replacement is impossible. Diplomatic setbacks from deaths average 4.7 years of delayed negotiations." "Exactly. So which is more efficient? 60 seconds and 15 credits, or 8 years and billions in lost opportunities?" The room filled with clicking sounds. Vrexian communication beyond the translators. Mara had learned it meant confusion, consideration, cognitive dissonance. "You are reframing efficiency," one of them said. "This is manipulation." "No, this is perspective." Mara walked among them. "Your species optimized for one kind of efficiency, ours optimized for another. You minimize immediate resource expenditure. We minimize total loss across time." She stopped at the dummy, its simulated wound still seeping fluid. "But here's what you're missing. When I wrapped Ambassador Trelvik's limb, I wasn't calculating efficiency. I wasn't running probability models. I saw someone suffering and I responded. The efficiency was a happy accident." "Then why did you respond?" another Vrexian asked. "What was your motivation if not logical outcome?" Mara met its eyes. "Because it was the right thing to do." The clicking intensified, spread through the entire group like a wave. "Define right," one demanded. "I can't." "Not in a way you'll understand through logic." Mara picked up a medical kit and tossed it to the nearest Vrexian. It caught the kit awkwardly, mandibles working in surprise. "So instead I'm going to show you." She activated another training dummy, then another, then 5 more. Injury simulations erupted across the room. Bleeding, broken limbs, respiratory failure, chemical burns. The Vrexians froze, their eyes darting between casualties, their bodies locked in observation mode. "Help them," Mara said. No one moved. I said help them. Still nothing. Just watching, calculating, waiting for permission from a hierarchy that wasn't there. Mara grabbed the nearest Vrexian by its upper appendage. The creature recoiled, its skin secreting defense compounds that burned her palm. She didn't let go. You see that dummy bleeding out? That's someone's colleague, someone's friend. Maybe someone who knows things no one else knows. Maybe someone who has ideas that could save thousands of lives someday. She pulled the Vrexian toward the casualty. Are you going to let all of that die because you're waiting for a resource allocation decision? The Vrexian's breathing tubes flared. I do not know how to... From me. Mara pressed a gauze pack into its appendage. Apply pressure here. Don't stop until the bleeding slows. The Vrexian hesitated. Its eyes found hers. Something passed between them. Something without words or logic. It pressed the gauze to the wound. Good. Keep pressure. Don't let up. Mara moved to the next Vrexian, handed it supplies, guided its appendages to another dummy. Breathing obstruction. Clear the airway. Like this, one by one, she pulled them from observation into action. Some struggled. Some applied bandages wrong. Some froze halfway through and had to be coached back into motion. But they tried. Within 5 minutes, every training dummy was being treated by a Vrexian volunteer. Clumsy, inefficient, wasteful by their standards, but trying. Mara stepped back, her hands burned and trembling from repeated contact with Vrexian defense secretions. Above, on the observation platform, Zexthor stood motionless. Then he did something no human had ever seen a Vrexian do. He placed one appendage over the center of his thorax, where his primary respiratory organ pulsed beneath chitin. A gesture of respect, of acknowledgement, of something deeper that didn't have a name yet. The training room fell silent, except for the soft sounds of Vrexians learning to care. 3 weeks into the training program and everything fell apart. Mara sprinted down the corridor toward the Vrexian residential sector, alarms screaming overhead. Doctor, Brennan's voice crackled in her earpiece, panicked and breathless. Mara, we have a situation. One of your trainees just violated collective law. Security is en route. This could end the entire program. She rounded the corner and nearly collided with a crowd of Vrexians. They stood in a tight cluster, their bodies forming a wall around something Mara couldn't see. Beyond them, armed Vrexian security forces advanced with weapons primed. Stand aside, the lead security officer commanded. The lawbreaker must face judgment. The crowd didn't move. Mara pushed through to the center. What she found made her heart stop. A young Vrexian, barely past emergence age, lay on the floor. Its carapace was cracked, purple fluid leaking from multiple fractures. Standing over it was Kelvin, one of her most dedicated students. And Kelvin was applying pressure bandages. What happened? Mara dropped to her knees beside them. Kelvan's mandibles clicked rapidly. Structural failure in the youth housing unit. Fell 3 levels. Spine column damaged. Probability of survival is 31% according to medical logistics assessment. So they decided not to treat? Resource allocation denied 4 minutes ago. Deemed inefficient use of regenerative technology for uncertain outcome. The young Vrexian's breathing tubes sputtered. Its eyes found Mara's, wide with fear and pain and something heartbreakingly familiar. The same look Ambassador Trelvik had given her. Please don't let me die alone. Step away from the youth, the security officer ordered. You are interfering with natural selection protocols. This is a capital offense. Kelvin didn't move. His appendages kept working, wrapping bandages, stabilizing fractures, doing everything Mara had taught him. I cannot step away. This individual requires medical intervention. Medical logistics has determined otherwise. Medical logistics is wrong. The crowd of Vrexians clicked in unison. Shock rippled through them like electricity. A Vrexian had just contradicted the collective. The security officer raised his weapon. Final warning. Abandon the youth or face termination. Mara stood, placing herself between the weapon and Kelvin. You'll have to go through me first. Lieutenant Bolton, this is not your jurisdiction. This is Vrexian law. Then your law is broken. Captain Vance's voice exploded in her earpiece. Mara, stand down! That's a direct order. You're about to start an interspecies incident. Mara reached down and grabbed medical supplies from her belt. She knelt beside Kelvan. Show me the spinal damage. Kelvin manipulated the youth's carapace, revealing the injury. Severe, but not impossible. Mara had seen worse on human soldiers and watched them walk again. We can save this life, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Right here, right now. It'll take 30 minutes in basic medical supplies. The security officer moved closer. You do not understand what you are asking. If we allow this, we abandon 73,000 cycles of evolution. We reject the principles that made us strong. We become weak. No, Ambassador Trelvik's voice rang out. He pushed through the crowd, his previously injured limb now fully regenerated. We become complete. The security forces hesitated. Trelvik moved to stand beside Mara. I have spent the last 3 weeks studying human history. Do you know what I learned? They nearly destroyed themselves 17 times. Wars, plagues, environmental collapse. By Vrexian standards, they should be extinct. He gestured at the injured youth. But every time humanity faced extinction, they survived because of one principle. They refused to abandon their damaged. They carried their wounded. They expended resources on the sick. They chose compassion over efficiency, and somehow, impossibly, it made them stronger. Another Vrexian stepped forward from the crowd. Then another. 5 of Mara's trainees formed a protective circle around the youth. We stand with Kelvan, one announced. The security officer's weapon trembled. You are committing treason against the collective. We are saving a life, Kelvan replied. If that is treason, then execute us all. Silence stretched across the corridor. The armed security forces looked to their leader. He looked to the crowd of Vrexians, more gathering every second. Then Hierarchon Zexthor appeared, moving through the masses with fluid grace. He stopped before the security officer. Lower your weapon. But Hierarchon, the law clearly states. I am aware of what the law states. I wrote most of it. Zexthor turned to face the growing crowd. But I have watched Lieutenant Bolton train our people for 3 weeks. I have reviewed the data, and I have come to a conclusion that frightens me more than anything in my existence. He paused, his breathing tubes pulsing rapidly. We have been wrong. For 73,000 cycles, we have been catastrophically wrong. The clicking sounds erupted everywhere. Confusion, disbelief. The foundations of Vrexian society cracking in real time. Zexthor knelt beside the injured youth. How long to save this life, Lieutenant? 20 minutes if we work together. Maybe less. Then let us begin. He looked at Kelvin. Show me what the human taught you. The security forces lowered their weapons. Mara's hands moved with practiced precision, guiding Kelvin and now Zexthor through the procedure. The crowd pressed closer, watching not with cold calculation, but with something new. Investment, concern, hope. The young Vrexian's breathing stabilized. Color returned to its carapace, its eyes focused, clearing from pain-induced haze. You will live, Zexthor told it. Not because the collective deemed you efficient, but because you matter. Because your life has value beyond calculation. He stood, addressing the crowd that now numbered in the hundreds. The council will convene tonight. We will debate. We will argue. Some will resist. But change has already begun. His eyes found Mara's, because one human saw suffering and refused to look away. And in doing so, she showed us what we lost when we chose efficiency over empathy. Zexthor's translator clicked off. He spoke in pure Vrexian, the thrumming vocalization resonating through every chest cavity present. The crowd responded in kind, a wave of sound that needed no translation. Agreement, acceptance, revolution. The council chamber stretched 500 meters across, carved from a single piece of obsidian asteroid. 12,000 Vrexians filled the space, their collective breathing creating a rhythmic hum that vibrated through the floor. While Mara stood at the center platform beside Hierarchon Zexthor, exposed and vulnerable under 1,000 compound eyes. This is madness, Commander Harris said through her earpiece. You're a lieutenant, not a diplomat. Let Captain Vance handle the politics. The collective requested her specifically, Vance replied. They want to hear from the person who started this. On the observation deck above, Ambassador Trelvik and the 50 trainees stood in formation. The young Vrexian Kelvin had rested among them, its spine fully healed, its presence a living symbol of everything this debate represented. The Council's High Arbiter emerged from shadow, its crystalline rank markers gleaming under harsh light. When it spoke, the translator's voice boomed across the chamber. We convene to address Proposal 793. The systematic integration of immediate intervention protocols into Vrexian medical practice. Hierarchant Zexthor, you claim this human has proven our foundational principles flawed. Present your evidence. Zexthor stepped forward. I present Lieutenant Mara Bolton herself, and the question she forces us to answer. He turned to face the assembled Vrexians. When did efficiency become our only measure of worth? Murmuring clicked through the chamber. A Vrexian council member rose, its elderly carapace scarred from decades of service. Hierarchant, you speak of worth as if it exists independent of function. This is philosophical contamination from human thought patterns. We are what we contribute to the collective, nothing more. Then explain, Ambassador Trelvik, Zexthor said. His injury rendered him 47% less functional. Medical logistics deemed him expendable. Yet he has since negotiated 3 critical trade agreements and prevented 2 territorial conflicts. How do you calculate the efficiency of his death against those outcomes? Another council member stood. Probability, statistical modeling. At the time of injury, we could not predict those future successes. We can only optimize based on present data. Mara found her voice. But you can predict compassion. Every eye turned to her. I'm a combat medic. I've treated hundreds of wounded soldiers. Some were officers, some were engineers, some were cooks and maintenance techs. I didn't calculate their future value before saving them. I just saved them. And you know what happened? She gestured to the trainees above. Some became heroes. Some became teachers. Some went back to cooking. But every single one of them lived, and their lives rippled outward in ways I could never predict or measure. The High Arbiter's mandibles clicked. Anecdotal evidence is not sufficient basis for systemic change. Then look at the data. Zexthor activated a holographic display. Numbers filled the air, scrolling faster than Mara could read. Human civilizations that prioritized individual welfare show 37% higher innovation rates, 42% better crisis response, 61% more stable long-term governance. Correlation is not causation, a council member challenged. True. So I commissioned a simulation. The holographic shifted, showing branching timelines. I asked our best computational analysts to model Vrexian history if we had implemented immediate intervention protocols 73,000 cycles ago. The simulation played out. Populations growing, technology advancing, conflicts resolving faster. The model predicts we would have colonized 9 additional star systems, prevented 8 civil wars, advanced our technology by approximately 4,000 cycles. Silence gripped the chamber. Your simulation is theoretical speculation, the High Arbiter said, but its voice carried less certainty. It is, Zexthor admitted, as theoretical as every resource allocation decision we make about injured individuals. We predict the cost of saving them. Why not predict the cost of losing them? A younger council member rose. 'Cause if we save everyone, we waste resources on those who contribute nothing. The weak, the damaged, the inefficient. Mara stepped forward. Define weak, those who cannot perform their function. Ambassador Trelvik couldn't perform his function when his limb was severed. Was he weak? Temporarily incapacitated is not the same as permanently weak. How did you know it was temporary? When I found him, you had already decided to let him die. What if I hadn't intervened? You would have eliminated someone who went on to achieve significant diplomatic victories. That's not efficiency. That's waste. The council members' breathing tubes flared. One example does not validate systemic change. Then consider this. Kelvan's voice rang out from the observation deck. I saved the youth 3 weeks ago. Medical logistics predicted 31% survival probability. They calculated the resource cost as unjustifiable. He gestured to the young Vrexian beside him. But Zephyr lived, and yesterday Zephyr identified a critical flaw in our station's environmental systems. A flaw that would have caused catastrophic decompression in 6 days, killing approximately 2,000 residents. The chamber erupted in clicks, shock, calculation, realization. Zephyr's survival cost us 14 minutes and 40 credits in medical supplies, Kelvin continued. Zephyr's death would have cost us 2,000 lives and 17 years of station reconstruction. Tell me which is more efficient. The High Arbiter turned to Mara. You have taught our people to question fundamental principles, to prioritize emotion over logic, to waste resources on uncertain outcomes. Do you understand the chaos this invites? I understand that chaos scares you, Mara said. But you know what scares me? A society so obsessed with efficiency that it forgot why efficiency matters in the first place. Enlighten us, human. Why does efficiency matter? To preserve life, to reduce suffering, to allow beings to thrive. Mara looked around the chamber. But if your efficiency requires you to watch your own people die, then it's not serving those goals, it's just serving itself. She walked to the edge of the platform. You want to know what humanity learned? We learned that the strongest societies aren't the ones that eliminate weakness. They're the ones that protect it. Because today's wounded soldier is tomorrow's brilliant scientist. Today's sick child is tomorrow's inspired leader. Today's dying ambassador is tomorrow's peace negotiator. Mara pointed at Sephra. And today's expendable youth is tomorrow's savior of 2,000 lives. The High Arbiter's compound eyes dimmed and brightened in rapid succession, processing, calculating, fighting against 73,000 cycles of evolutionary programming. If we accept this proposal, it finally said, we fundamentally alter what it means to be Vrexian. We abandon proven principles. We embrace uncertainty. Yes, Zexthor said. We do. And you believe this will make us stronger? I believe it will make us complete. Zexthor looked at Mara. This human saved one life and triggered a revolution. Imagine what we could achieve if all 12 billion Vrexians learned to care. The High Arbiter raised all 6 appendages. The chamber fell silent. The council will vote. All in favor of Proposal 793, signify. For 5 eternal seconds, nothing happened. Then Zexthor's appendages rose. Then Trelvix. Then all 50 trainees together. Slowly, like a wave building across an ocean, appendages rose throughout the chamber. Hundreds. Thousands. Not all. Fierce opposition remained. Clusters of Vrexians whose appendages stayed firmly down. But enough. More than enough. The High Arbiter's translator crackled with what might have been a wonder. The motion passes. Let it be recorded that on this day the Vrexian collective chose compassion over calculation. And let it be known that we learned this from humanity. 6 months after the council vote, Mara stood in the observation deck of the joint human Vrexian medical station orbiting Vrex Prime. Below, the planet glowed purple and gold, its cities transformed by the quiet revolution spreading through every sector of their civilization. You should see this, Doctor, Brennan said, pulling up a data stream on his tablet. Emergency response times on Vrex Prime have dropped by 63%. Survival rates for critical injuries are up 89%. And get this, they're reporting a 14% increase in overall productivity. Compassion made them more efficient, Mara said. It's driving some of the old guard insane. Brennan grinned. Turns out, saving lives actually has measurable economic benefits. Who knew? Captain Vance entered the observation deck, her expression grim. Lieutenant, we have a problem. Mara turned. What kind of problem? The kind that could undo everything you've accomplished. Vance activated the main display. A star chart appeared, highlighting a Sector 3 jumps from Vrexian space. The Krell Dominion just declared war on the Vrexian collective. Full invasion fleet, 200 warships. ETA 70s, 2 hours. Mara's blood went cold. The Krell were known throughout the galaxy for one thing: total annihilation of conquered species. The Vrexians can't fight that, Brennan said. Their military doctrine is built around efficiency, not survival. They'll calculate the odds and surrender, or they'll fight and lose millions trying to prove they're still logical, Vance added. Either way, this is catastrophic. The door hissed open. Hierarch and Zexthor entered with Ambassador Trelvik and a Vrexian Mara didn't recognize. This one wore battle armor, its carapace scarred and modified with weapon systems. Fleet Commander Drexnall, Zexthor, introduced. He leads our defensive forces. Drexnall's translator carried cold fury. I opposed your proposal, Lieutenant Bolton. I argued that compassion would weaken us, make us vulnerable. His mandibles clicked rapidly. I was wrong about the weakening part, but I was right about vulnerable. He activated a tactical display. The Krell fleet appeared, vast and terrible. The Krell detected our societal changes. They monitor all neighboring species for weakness. They saw Vrexians abandoning efficiency protocols, expending resources on damaged individuals, prioritizing emotion over logic. Drexnall's eyes fixed on Mara. They saw weakness, and they attacked. This isn't weakness, Mara said. Tell that to the 12 billion Vrexians who will die when the Krell arrive. Zexthor stepped between them. Commander Drexnall came here for a reason, Lieutenant. Not to blame you, but to ask for your help. My help? I'm a medic, not a military strategist. No. Trelvik moved closer. You are someone who sees problems differently than we do. Who finds solutions outside traditional calculation? He gestured at the Krell fleet. Our computational models give us a 4% chance of victory. Our military doctrine says we should surrender to minimize casualties, but you would not surrender, would you? Not to genocidal invaders? No. Then show us how humans fight when the odds are impossible. Mara stared at the tactical display. 200 Krell warships against maybe 70 Virexian vessels. The Krell specialized in overwhelming force and brutal efficiency. They didn't take prisoners, didn't negotiate, didn't show mercy. How does Vrexian military doctrine work? She asked. Drexnall pulled up fleet formations. We calculate optimal engagement patterns. Maximize damage to enemy while minimizing our losses. When casualties exceed acceptable thresholds, we disengage and reassess. You retreat when the math says you're losing. It is efficient. It's also predictable. Mara studied the Krell formations. They're counting on you to fight logically, to withdraw when losses mount, to protect your forces instead of committing fully, because that is logical. For a species that values individual lives above total victory, yes. But you're not that species anymore. Mara turned to face them. You voted to embrace compassion, to value individual lives. You know what that means in war? Drexnall's breathing tubes fluttered. That we have more to lose. No. That you have more worth fighting for. Mara pulled up human military history. Battles where outnumbered forces held impossible positions. Last stands that became legends. Humans don't fight efficiently, we fight desperately. Because when you care about the people behind you, retreat stops being an option. She highlighted a particular engagement. The defense of Station Harlow against pirate forces. 3 human ships against 20. Odds worse than what the Vrexians faced. We won that battle. You know how? We stopped thinking about survival probabilities and started thinking about one thing. Those pirates will not touch our home. Zexthor leaned forward. You fought irrationally. We fought with purpose beyond calculation. The pirates expected us to run. We didn't. They expected us to preserve our forces. We didn't. We committed everything because the alternative was unacceptable. Drexnall's mandibles worked silently. You are suggesting we abandon military doctrine entirely. I'm suggesting you fight like beings who have something to lose. The Krell think you're weak because you started caring about individual lives. Prove them wrong. Show them that caring makes you more dangerous, not less. Captain Vance stepped forward. Lieutenant Bolton, I can't endorse this strategy. It violates every principle of measured military response. Good thing she's talking to Vrexians, not humans, Trelvik said. He turned to Drex now. Our people just learned to value life. Now we must prove we can defend it. Drexnall was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled up the Vrexian fleet roster. If we commit everything, fight without calculating acceptable losses, we will take catastrophic casualties. Yes, Mara said. Many will die. Yes. But the Krell will learn that Vrexians do not surrender. That we protect our own. That compassion is not weakness. His eyes gleamed with something new. Something the Vrexian species had never possessed before. Righteous fury. Assemble the fleet, Drexnall commanded. Tell every ship captain that we fight not for efficiency, but for survival. Not for the collective, but for every individual Vrexian on our homeworld who deserves to see tomorrow. He looked at Mara. And tell them a human taught us this, so the Krell will know exactly what they're facing. Alarms blared across the station. The Krell fleet had jumped early. They were 60 hours out instead of 72. The war had begun. The Vrexian defense fleet formed up in a pattern that made Drexnall's tactical officers click with confusion. No calculated spacing, no optimized firing solutions, no reserves held back for strategic repositioning. Every ship committed, every weapon armed, every crew member at battle stations. Mara watched from the command deck of the flagship Infinite Calculation, a name that now carried bitter irony. Beside her, Drexnell studied the advancing Krell armada with compound eyes that betrayed nothing. They are not slowing, he observed. They see our formation and interpret it as panic. Desperation. Let them, Mara said. Desperation is honest. You're fighting for your homeworld, for your people. Let the Krell see that truth. The Krell fleet emerged from FTL Jump in perfect battle formation. 200 warships, each one bristling with weapons designed for one purpose: complete annihilation. Their commander broadcast across all frequencies, the translation cold and mechanical. Vrexian Collective, you have become contaminated by human weakness. You have abandoned efficiency. Your species is no longer viable. Surrender your worlds and we will process your population into productive resources. Resist and we will eradicate you completely. Drexnall's mandibles spread wide. He opened a channel to every Vrexian ship in the fleet. 6 months ago I would have calculated our chances and recommended surrender. 6 months ago I believed individual lives were expendable when measured against collective survival. His breathing tubes pulsed rapidly. But a human named Mara Bolton taught us that individual lives are what makes survival meaningful, that caring for each other is not weakness, that compassion creates strength we cannot measure. He paused, letting his words echo across 70 warships. Today the Krell will learn what happens when you threaten beings who have learned to value life. Today we fight not as efficient machines but as people defending our home. And we will show them that Vrexians do not surrender. Not anymore. The Krell fleet accelerated. Weapons powered up. All ships, Drexnall commanded. Full offensive. No retreat. No calculated disengagement. We hold this line, or we die here. The first Krell salvo lit up space with plasma fire. Vrexian shields flared, holding against the initial barrage. Return fire lanced out, focused and precise. 3 Krell ships took damage. 1 lost shields completely. They are holding formation, Drexnall's tactical officer reported. Maintaining optimal firing patterns. Expecting us to break and scatter. Then we disappoint them. Drexnall opened a direct channel to Mara. Tell me what humans would do now. Mara studied the battlefield. The Krell fought like the Vrexians used to. Perfectly calculated, mathematically optimized, emotionally sterile. Humans would do something stupid, she said. Define stupid. We'd make them angry, break their perfect formation, force them to respond emotionally instead of logically. Drexnall's translator crackled with what might have been laughter. 6 months ago, I would have called that inefficient. Now, I call it inspired. He issued rapid commands. 20 Vrexian ships broke from defensive positions and charged directly into the Krell center formation. No evasive maneuvers. No calculated attack vectors. Pure aggression. The Krell commander's broadcast filled with what the translator identified as confusion. Vrexian forces employing irrational tactics. Probability of success negligible. They are committing suicide. But those 20 ships carried something the Krell calculations couldn't account for. Crews who had learned from Kelvan's defiance, from Zephra's survival, from Mara's simple act of compassion 6 months ago. They carried purpose. The lead Vrexian ship, crewed by graduates of Mara's training program, rammed into a Krell battlecruiser at full speed. The explosion consumed both vessels, but the blast wave disrupted the Krell formation. "Acknowledge, vestige of logic," Drexenol transmitted. "Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." More Vrexian ships pressed the attack. The Krell formation buckled, ships breaking pattern to avoid collisions, firing solutions disrupted by unexpected aggression. "Enemy fleet experiencing coordination failure," the tactical officer reported. "They are adapting, but slower than predicted. They do not understand why we fight this way." "Because they have never cared about anything," Mara said quietly. The battle raged for 7 hours. Vrexian ships fell, their crews dying with their names spoken by commanders who remembered each individual loss. The Krell lost ships too, their perfect efficiency shattered by unpredictable desperation. But the mathematics were brutal. 70 ships against 200. Even fighting with unprecedented ferocity, the Vrexians were losing. "We have 43 ships remaining," the tactical officer reported. "Krell forces down to 167. At current attrition rates, we will be destroyed before reducing them below operational effectiveness." Drexnal's breathing tubes cycled rapidly. "Then we accelerate attrition. All ships ramming protocol. We make every loss count for maximum damage. Commander, that will guarantee total fleet destruction. I am aware. Execute the order." Mara grabbed his appendage. "Wait, you're thinking like the old Vrexians again. Calculating the most efficient way to lose. We cannot win, Lieutenant. The mathematics are absolute. The mathematics said Ambassador Trelvik should die. The mathematics said Zephra wasn't worth saving. When have the mathematics been right about what matters?" Drexnal turned to her. "What do you suggest?" Mara looked at the tactical display. At Vrex Prime glowing beyond the battle. At the 12 billion lives depending on this fight. Then she saw it, the thing the Krell wouldn't expect because they had never experienced it. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Tell them Vrexians are dying to protect their homeworld from genocidal invaders. Tell them we need help. The nearest human fleet is 9 days away." "I know, but the Krell don't." Understanding clicked through Drexnel's mandibles. He broadcast on all frequencies, aimed directly at the Krell fleet. "This is Fleet Commander Drexnel of the Vrexian Collective to all Allied forces. We are engaged with hostile Krell invasion fleet. Request immediate assistance. To our human allies, we learned compassion from you. Now we ask that you show us what human loyalty means." Silence stretched across the void. Then Captain Vance's voice crackled through. "This is Captain Laura Vance of Earth Forces. Message received and confirmed. Human reinforcements inbound. Hold the line, Commander. Help is coming." It was a bluff. Everyone knew it was a bluff. But the Krell didn't understand bluffs. They understood calculations, and the calculation of fighting Vrexians who had learned desperation, plus humans who might arrive at any moment suddenly became very different. The Krell fleet hesitated, just for a moment, just long enough. "All ships," Drexnel commanded. "They are uncertain. Press the attack now." The remaining Vrexian vessels surged forward with renewed fury, and for the first time in the battle, the Krell began to retreat, not surrender. Not yet. Because they had calculated a new variable they didn't understand. The bond between species who had learned to care about each other. The Krell retreat lasted 18 minutes before their command structure reasserted control. Their fleet stopped, regrouped, and began advancing again with cold mechanical precision. They had calculated the bluff. "Human reinforcements will not arrive in time," the Krell commander broadcast. "Your deception is transparent. Resume termination protocols." Drexnal looked at Mara. 29 Vrexian ships remained against 153 Krell warships. The mathematics were merciless. "We bought 18 minutes, he said. For my species, that is an eternity of irrational hope. Then, we make it count." Mara pulled up the tactical display. "You said Vrexians are good at calculations. Calculate this. What would hurt the Krell most? Not strategically, emotionally. The Krell do not experience emotion. Everyone experiences emotion. They just don't admit it. Pride, certainty, the belief that they're superior. Mara zoomed in on the Krell flagship. Sink that ship. Make their commander look weak. Make them doubt. Drexnell's eyes gleamed. All remaining vessels target the Krell command ship. Ignore all other targets. We either destroy their leadership or die trying. 29 Vrexian warships turned as one and burned toward the enemy flagship. The Krell formation shifted, vessels moving to intercept and protect their commander. They are responding emotionally, the tactical officer observed, abandoning optimal firing solutions to shield the flagship. This is inefficient. This is exactly what we needed, Mara said. The Vrexian fleet punched through the Krell defensive screen, losing 8 ships in the process. 21 remained. The flagship loomed ahead, its weapons tracking desperately. Ramming speed, Drexel ordered. Commander, incoming transmission. The communications officer interrupted. Source unknown. It is not Krell. It is not human. Put it through. The voice that filled the command deck carried harmonics that made Mara's teeth ache. The translator struggled to process the alien syntax. Vrexian vessels. This is Coordinator Thalros of the Assembled Minds. We have observed your conflict with the Krell Dominion. We find your tactical approach fascinating. Drexnell's mandibles clicked in confusion. The Assembled Minds have never involved themselves in territorial conflicts. Correct. We observe. We analyze. We remain neutral. The voice paused. But 6 of your temporal units ago, we detected an anomaly. A Vrexian saving another Vrexian despite logical determination that intervention was inefficient. We calculated this as statistical error. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared. Dozens of them. Ships unlike anything Mara had seen, their designs impossible and beautiful. Then we detected more anomalies, Thalros continued. Hundreds, thousands. An entire species abandoning 73,000 cycles of evolutionary programming. We calculated the probability of this occurring naturally. The result was effectively 0. What are you saying? Mara asked. We are saying, Lieutenant Mara Bolton, that you have accomplished something we believed impossible. You have taught logic-based beings to choose compassion over calculation. You have proven that evolution is not destiny. The Assembled Minds fleet moved into formation between the Vrexians and the Krell. We have observed the Krell for 9,000 cycles, Thalros said. They are efficient, perfect examples of ruthless survival strategy. We have never intervened because intervention would compromise our objectivity. The lead Assembled Minds vessel powered weapons that made the Krell Armada look primitive. But today, we choose to compromise our objectivity. Because we wish to see what happens when beings who have learned compassion are allowed to survive. The Krell represent what you were. You represent what you are becoming. And we find the latter far more interesting. The Krell commander's broadcast carried something new. Uncertainty. Assembled Minds, your intervention violates your stated neutrality protocols. This is not logical. You are correct, Thalros replied. It is not logical. We find we no longer care. Withdraw from Vrexian space, or we will demonstrate why our species abandoned warfare 8,000 cycles ago. Not because we could not fight, but because nothing was worth fighting for, until now. The Krell fleet held position for 37 seconds, calculating, processing, trying to find an equation that made sense of a universe where neutral observers suddenly took sides because they found compassion interesting. Then they jumped to FTL, all 153 ships. Gone. The command deck erupted in clicking sounds. Relief, disbelief, joy. Drexel turned to Mara. You saved 1 life 6 months ago. Today you saved 12 billion. I didn't save them. You did. Your people learned to fight for each other because you showed us how. He opened a channel to all Vrexian ships. Fleet, this is Commander Drexel. The Krell have withdrawn. Vrex Prime is secure. Return to defensive positions and begin casualty recovery. Breathing tubes cycling slowly. and prepare to search for survivors from our lost vessels. Every individual matters. No one is left behind. Thelross's voice filled the channel again. Commander Drexnell, we will assist in your recovery operations, and we have a proposal for the Vrexian Collective. What kind of proposal? The assembled minds consist of 47 species who achieved technological transcendence through pure logic. We are efficient, advanced, powerful. The harmonics shifted, carrying something that might have been wistfulness. We are also stagnant. We have not truly evolved in 8,000 cycles. We solve problems but create nothing new. We exist but do not grow. On the view screen, an assembled mind's vessel moved alongside the infinite calculation. Its hull was translucent, revealing impossible geometries inside. We wish to learn what you are learning, Thelross said. We wish to understand how compassion creates strength, how caring for individuals benefits the collective in ways our calculations cannot predict. We wish Lieutenant Mara Bolton to teach us what she taught you. Mara's heart skipped. You want me to train the assembled minds. We want you to show 47 species that logic is not enough, that efficiency without empathy is just slow extinction. The vessel's internal lights pulsed in rhythmic patterns. You saved one Vrexian and changed their entire civilization. Imagine what you could do with 47. Captain Vance's voice cut in from the medical station. Mara, this is bigger than either of us. This is first contact with one of the galaxy's oldest coalitions. I need to consult Earth Command. With respect, Captain, Earth Command did not teach the Vrexians compassion. Lieutenant Bolton did. Drexnell moved closer to Mara, and she should decide if she wishes to continue. Mara looked out at the stars, at Vrex Prime glowing peacefully below, at the recovered Vrexian survivors being pulled from disabled ships by crews who now valued every individual life. She thought about Ambassador Trelvik bleeding out while his colleagues watched in silence, about Kelvin defying his entire species to save Zephyra, about Drexenol learning to fight for something beyond calculations, about one simple act of compassion rippling outward until it changed the fate of civilizations. I'm a medic, she said quietly. I fix broken things, and if the assembled minds think their civilization is broken, she met Thelross's transmitted gaze. Then yes, I'll help. The clicking sounds from every Vrexian on the command deck merged into a single harmonious rhythm. Approval, pride, gratitude. And from the assembled mind's vessel, lights pulsed in patterns that needed no translation. Hope. 5 years later, Mara stood in the Grand Assembly Hall on Unity Station, a structure built by 17 different species working together for the first time in recorded history. The chamber could hold 50,000 beings, and today every seat was filled. Humans, Vrexians, the 47 species of the assembled minds, and newcomers, species who had heard about the revolution and wanted to learn. Ambassador Trelvik approached, his movements graceful despite the ceremonial robes that marked his new position as first speaker of the Compassionate Accord. Beside him walked Kelvan, now a training coordinator, and Zephyra, whose environmental expertise had saved 6 colonies from ecological collapse. Nervous? Trelvik asked. Mara adjusted her uniform. No longer a lieutenant. The rank felt strange even after 2 years. Commander Bolton, leader of the Empathy Initiative, teacher to civilizations. Terrified, she admitted. Good. Fear means you still care about the outcome. Trelvik's mandibles curved in what Mara had learned to recognize as a smile. 5 years ago, I was bleeding to death on a containment cell floor. Today I speak for 63 species who have embraced compassion as fundamental doctrine. Tell me that is not worth a little terror. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the assembly. Coordinator Thelross took the stage, its crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns. When it spoke, its voice resonated through every species' auditory range simultaneously. 5 of your standard years ago, the assembled minds observed an anomaly. A human named Mara Bolton saved a dying Vrexian against all logical calculation. We dismissed it as statistical noise, irrelevant data in an uncaring universe. Thelross's form pulsed with light. We were wrong. That single act of compassion triggered a cascade we could never have predicted. The Vrexian collective abandoned 73,000 cycles of pure efficiency. They learned to value individual lives. They learned to sacrifice for each other. They learned to fight not with cold calculation, but with desperate love for their homeworld. Images appeared on holographic displays throughout the chamber. The battle against the Krell, Vrexian ships charging into impossible odds. Drexnol's final stand. The assembled minds studied this transformation. We ran simulations. We calculated probabilities. We tried to quantify the benefits of compassion using pure logic. Felross's harmonics carried what might have been laughter. We failed completely. Because compassion cannot be measured, it can only be experienced. More images. The 47 species of the assembled minds learning emergency response from human and Vrexian instructors. Ancient civilizations that had not touched another being in millennia, suddenly forming rescue teams, medical units, disaster response corps. So we invited Commander Bolton to teach us, and in learning from her, we discovered something profound. We had achieved technological transcendence 8,000 cycles ago. We could manipulate matter at quantum levels. We could traverse galaxies. We could process information faster than supernovae. Telross's light dimmed. But we had forgotten how to care. We had optimized ourselves into isolation. We were perfect and utterly alone. The coordinator turned to Mara. Commander Bolton taught us that perfection is not the goal. Connection is. She showed us that the strongest bonds are not formed through efficiency, but through shared struggle. Through saving each other when logic says to let go. Thelross gestured to the assembled species. Today we formalize what began 5 years ago with one human saving one Vrexian. Today we establish the Compassionate Accord. A coalition of species committed to one simple principle. Individual lives matter, not because they are efficient, not because they serve collective goals, but because they exist, and existence has inherent worth. The chamber erupted in sounds, clicking, harmonics. Vocalizations from species Mara was still learning to identify. All of it meaning the same thing. Agreement, commitment, hope. Commander Bolton, Thelross said. Would you address the assembly? Mara stepped to the podium. 50,000 beings fell silent. She thought about what to say, about prepared speeches and diplomatic language, about representing humanity and living up to impossible expectations. Then she thought about Ambassador Trelvik's eyes as he bled out on that containment cell floor, about the terror and hope she had seen there. 5 years ago, I was a combat medic who saw someone dying and helped them, Mara said simply. I didn't think about politics. I didn't consider the implications. I just saw suffering and responded. That's all I did. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces and forms. But here's what I learned from all of you, that one act mattered because you made it matter. The Vrexians could have executed Kelvan for saving Zephyra. The assembled minds could have stayed neutral during the Krell invasion. Every species here could have calculated that compassion was inefficient and returned to your old ways. Mara's voice grew stronger. But you didn't. You took that one act and built a revolution. You proved that caring for each other doesn't make you weak. It makes you unstoppable. She gestured to the Vrexian delegation. The collective that once let their own die now runs the most advanced medical response network in the galaxy. The species that valued only efficiency now saves more lives per cycle than any civilization in recorded history. Then to the assembled minds. Species that hadn't touched another being in millennia now teach rescue operations. You who had transcended physical needs now build hospitals and train emergency responders and show up when others are suffering. Mara's eyes found Captain Vance in the human delegation, her mentor, her friend, the woman who had trusted a lieutenant to change the galaxy. Humanity taught me to help people. But you taught me why it matters. You showed me that compassion isn't weakness or inefficiency or illogical emotion. It's the most powerful force in the universe. Because it turns individuals into communities. It transforms calculation into purpose. It makes beings who have everything worth living for fight like hell to protect it. She stepped back from the podium. I'm just a medic who saw someone struggling and rebandaged their wound. You are the ones who proved that simple act could save civilizations. You are the revolution. I just held the bandage. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Trelvik stood. Then Kelvin. Then Zephyra. Then every Vrexian in the chamber. Thelros. And the assembled minds pulsed with synchronized light. The human delegation rose as one, Captain Vance's eyes bright with tears. And one by one, every species in the assembly stood. 50,000 beings from 63 worlds, united by one truth that Mara had shown them 5 years ago. Individual lives matter. Always. Without exception. The compassionate accord was ratified by unanimous consent. No calculations needed, no probability models required. Just 63 species choosing together to build a galaxy where suffering was met with action, where the wounded were never left behind, where efficiency bowed to empathy. Later, on the observation deck, Mara watched ships from a dozen species depart Unity Station, medical vessels, rescue ships, disaster response fleets, all heading to corners of the galaxy where beings needed help. Trelvik joined her, his regenerated limb moving with natural grace. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "That moment in the containment cell when you could have followed protocol and walked away." Mara touched the window, her reflection ghostly against the stars. "No. Do you regret surviving?" "Never." Trelvik placed one appendage over his chest, where his primary respiratory organ pulsed steadily. "I was dead, and you gave me life. Not just biological function, but purpose, meaning. A reason to exist beyond efficiency calculations." He looked at the departing ships. 12 billion Vrexians live because you saved one. 47 species rediscovered compassion because you showed us it was possible. How many trillions across the galaxy will be saved by the compassionate accord? I don't know. I'm not good at those kinds of calculations. Neither am I. Not anymore. Trelvik's mandibles curved. But I know this. One human saw suffering and refused to look away. And the galaxy will never be the same. Mara smiled. Through the viewport, a medical frigate bearing the Compassionate Accord insignia jumped to FTL. Inside were Vrexian, human, and assembled minds crews, heading toward a distress call 3 systems away. Beings who had learned to care, who would arrive at scenes of crisis and respond not with calculation, but with compassion. Who would see the wounded and act without hesitation. Just like Mara had taught them, she thought about the long chain of moments that had led here, about one dying ambassador and a crude compression bandage, about Kelvan defying his species, about Drexnol learning to fight for more than efficiency, about ancient civilizations rediscovering forgotten emotions, about how the smallest act of kindness could echo across the stars. "Come on," Mara said to Trelvik. "We have new species requesting training. Apparently, word is spreading that compassion is the future." "It always was," Trelvik replied. "We just needed someone to show us." They walked together toward the training facilities, a human and a Vrexian, teacher and student, savior and saved. Behind them, the stars shone bright with infinite possibility. And across the galaxy, billions of beings learned what Mara had always known. That caring for each other was not humanity's weakness. It was humanity.